Hey guys, welcome to jonphoto.co. This is John, and today is Tuesday, which is tip day. And today I wanted to talk about some exposure basics and how to use your camera in M or manual mode. This is super important because it just gives you way more control over what you can do and what kind of pictures you take. Now, it's much more important to take a good picture than to make a good picture. You can take a picture, using your auto settings or whatever, and then upload it to Instagram and hope that Instagram makes it great. And that's fine for Facebook posts and different things. But if you're actually looking to get serious about photography or you just want to be better, then I highly recommend using manual mode and really getting a great picture that you can work with and get the most out of. So with today's cameras, they have amazing auto functions and they're just getting better and better. So if you're brand spanking new to DSLRs and photography, then I highly recommend just staying in auto and working on your composition. That being said, as intelligent as cameras are getting, they cannot do everything. So I wanted to start off today by talking about the lighting triangle.
The lighting triangle.
Hopefully today I can kind of clear up a lot of confusion about all of the, settings and buttons on your camera and what they really do. The lighting triangle consists of three parts: ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. So let's start with ISO. The ISO setting, or ISO, is an adjustment that determines the light your camera digitally adds. So say you're in a dark shooting scenario and you need more light, digitally boosting it is a valid option, at a cost. The higher the ISO, the more digital light and the greater loss in image quality. Your ISO setting can be adjusted using this button. ISO settings generally range from 100 to 6400 plus. You'll need to determine the right setting based on what environment you're in and the other two parts of the triangle. Just for an example, bright sunny days don't require high ISOs, but at an indoor event or after sunset, you might need to boost them up a little bit to get a properly lit photo. My advice is try your best to work with the other two parts of the triangle before adjusting ISO to get the best quality. That being said, in a live situation where it's vital to capture a specific moment, don't be afraid to boost the ISO to get a faster shutter speed. Moving on to aperture. The aperture is the feature of the lens that determines how much light can enter into the camera. You can have a wide aperture that lets in a lot of light or a narrow aperture that lets in a little bit of light. The aperture is usually adjusted either in the menu or by pressing this button and moving this dial. Aperture is generally recorded in f-stops, for example f2.8 or f5.6 or f22. The aperture can greatly adjust the lighting or exposure without using any kind of digital boost. Here's an example. Watch the clouds as we overexpose the image. The detail in the sky disappears, and this is true for most of the highlights. And as we underexpose the image, people start blending into the trees and we can't make out the details in the shadows. So the trick is to find the sweet spot where the details of the highlights and the shadows are clear. Here's another example. In this picture, the image is overexposed. As you can see, the outlines around the shoulders are blending in with the street, and the highlights are really not that detailed. Here the image is underexposed, and as you can see in the background and some of the people, there's a big loss in detail in the shadows. This picture has pretty good exposure. You can see the details, even in the highlights. You can see the blue in the sky a little bit, and the details in the shadows are not completely blacked out. Finally, we come to shutter speed. Shutter speed determines the speed of the shutter. Pictures are generally taken in fractions of a second. This small amount of time is the time that the shutter is open to allow light into the sensor, which is how the image is recorded. You can see the shutter speed here and adjust it using this dial. The faster the shutter speed, or the higher the fraction, the quicker you capture an image in motion. The slower the shutter speed, the more prone the image is to blur. So if you get a blurry image that kind of looks like this, it's most likely because you had too slow of a shutter speed. Here's an example. Melody's face in this picture is fine, but she was walking and swinging her arms, and because my shutter speed wasn't high enough, there is some motion blur around her hands. Notice how the other objects not in motion are not blurred at all. So I went to a faster shutter speed and got the picture I needed. No blur, crisp image. Also, remember that the faster the shutter speed, the more light you'll need. Sometimes you'll be put in a tricky situation where you need fast shutter speed and more light. and this is where your ISO setting comes in handy. Here's an example of artistic things you can do with shutter speed. For instance, this car is sharp, but the background is motion blurred. I did this by setting my shutter speed to about 1/80 and panning the camera as the car drove by. Shutter speed can be fun to play around with. So, there's our triangle. Use these 3 controls to get great photos in every situation. So let's do a quick pop quiz. Question 1. Let's say you want to take pictures at an indoor concert. Concerts are generally dark. There's some lighting from the stage lights. People also move quickly when they're performing. What arrangement of settings would you use to get good photos at a concert without a lot of light? A. High ISO, wide aperture, and slow shutter speed. B. Medium ISO, wide aperture, and fast shutter speed. Or C. Low ISO, narrow aperture, and fast shutter speed. If you answered B, you would be correct. Although we may have to sacrifice a little quality, it is important to have good photos that aren't blurry. No one likes a blurry photo. Question 2. How about you want to shoot your kid's soccer game? You're outside, the sun is shining, and the kids are moving fast. Do you choose A. High ISO, wide aperture, slow shutter speed? B. Low ISO, narrow aperture, slow shutter speed? Or C. Low ISO, narrow aperture, and fast shutter speed? The answer is C. With all those soccer players running around so fast, you're going to need a fast shutter speed. And it's a good thing that it's a sunny day. Your photos will turn out great. Question 3. It's a nice overcast day, you're doing a portrait shoot. This one's tricky. You choose A. Low ISO, narrow aperture, or slow shutter speed. B. High ISO, wide aperture, and slow shutter speed. Or C. Low ISO, wide aperture, medium shutter speed. A or C can be correct. It really just depends on what you want. Do you want your subject to be in focus and the background to be out of focus? I recommend C. If you want everything behind your subject to be in focus, choose A. Which brings us to a side note. The aperture also is a primary influence on depth of field, which we will elaborate on another day. Thank you so much for watching, and tune in tomorrow.